Welcome and thanks for tuning in to the Victorian Aboriginal News Van Talks podcast. I'm your host, Charles Parkiner.
Victorian Aboriginal News acknowledges and pays respect to traditional owners and custodians across Australia. We acknowledge the elders who have gone before, those who currently lead their communities, and those who will follow in years and generations to come.
This podcast was made possible with support from the Community Broadcasting Foundation. Find out more at cbf.org.au.
Over the past several years, I've spoken to a number of educators about how Aboriginal cultures and histories can be best integrated into this country's current education systems. Joining me today to continue this narrative is one of Australia's most respected authorities on this matter. She is a writer, teacher, television and radio personality, journalist and public speaker, among so many other skills. She's a finalist in the 2024 NAIDOC Education Award. It's a big thank you for joining me on the program to Yankunytjatjara and Wirangu woman Shelley Ware. Shelley, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
To those who may be new to all this, some who may be, well, you say denied an education.
Absolutely.
Which I think is a beautiful way of putting it. Why is it so important that we have these histories and cultures in our education system?
We're wanting this generation and next generation to have an impact on Australia as a whole and the beauty that is held within our cultures and histories that can be shared with them, so that when they step forward into the world and have positions of power, they have an empathy and connection to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders' histories and cultures, and that will influence the way that they make their decisions, the way they bring our people into the real conversations and the real important, levels within government, within local community, within their homes, and all different levels will be impacted. But once they have that connection, we'll see a change in the culture of all Australians.
What sort of changes do you want to see?
I want to see that everybody, we talk about it all the time. We talk about reconciliation. We talk about everyone being equal, but we can't have equality if we don't have equity in this country. So understanding that we have different starting lines, that we have different points of view, that we have share in different cultures, and that all of that needs to be acknowledged and it needs to be celebrated. It needs to be changed. We need to put things in place for equity to be in a place where we can start actually having real conversations about equality. And I would like to see our children feeling safe when they go to school and not leave school as survivors because they're in culturally unsafe places, but to leave school thriving and then in their true self-determination can create a better world for themselves and the next generation.
What does cultural safety look like for you in a school? You've brought it up. Let's dive down into that.
Yeah, so cultural safety is when a child can go in, they can see their own culture being celebrated, they can see that their teacher is proud of it, has their own connection, so their connection to not just the 270-odd years since colonisation, where everyone thinks that our history of this country starts, but to the 65,000 plus years of this country and celebrating and connecting to the beauty within that. So when the teachers are celebrating that and their localised community is celebrated as well, and those children's communities are celebrated in their country and their language and their culture within the classroom, the children are seen, they feel heard, they feel valued, and they feel celebrated. It doesn't have to be every minute of the day. It's the subtle embedding of it that makes it beautiful. So when these children are in there, they feel valued. They also, the teacher is a part of their connection to their culture, so they help them leave. It's that two-way learning thing that teachers really need to understand. We learn from each other. Teachers should look up two-way learning. They should really understand it because we can gain so much from each other. The children leave better with self-determination, strong in culture, strong in self-identity because the teachers have played a role. And then the teachers can't unsee what they've seen. They start informing policy. They start asking leadership questions. Why haven't we got policies around racism? Why haven't we got policies around making sure that there are First Nations peoples in the school? And why aren't they here? Why haven't we got more children? You can't unsee it.
And we will get down to some of that granular level action a little bit later on. But you've been on this path now for over 25 years?
Yes.
And before, so more than 25 years. So you've been advocating over that time for systemic change at a national level. So let's start there, but with the understanding that I do want to get to a more granular level further on. So what do you see at a big picture level that's required of federal and state governments to overhaul and bring about an unwhitewashing, if you will, of the current education systems?
Yeah. So when I went to school, there wasn't anything in the curriculum. I watched one video. That one video genuinely scarred me for life. I didn't tell anyone about it. I saw terrible genocide of my people on a screen and images that I just wasn't aware of that had been happening. Because
do you mind telling me a bit about that?
Yeah, like I saw images of babies' heads being kicked off by people on horses, and it was a game. They were buried in the sand and it was a game. And that was for me to see in about year 8.
Yeah.
I had lived a beautiful life as a young Aboriginal girl, unaware, and it wasn't the appropriate time for me to know that history developing as a young person. I'd had no pre-conversations in my classroom and no post-conversations in my classroom. It was one video. The nun stood up the front, had felt they'd ticked the box, and that they were smiling at me through this whole video.
Were you the only black kid in the class?
I was the only one in there. So it was so unsafe. So it's probably driven a lot of my work so that our children don't feel like that. I didn't go home and tell my parents because I was just so shocked, and it took years before I could come out and talk about it, that had happened to me. And it wasn't that I was unsafe in my own home to talk about it, because we had beautiful ongoing conversations. It was just that I was just so shocked and just hurt and just didn't know what was going on. And I chose to sort of live in the happiness of what was going on. I think I just blocked it, essentially. So we have that space where it's going on. The good thing is that since that happened as a child and then I became a teacher, like I used to put NAIDOC posters out as a teacher and they wouldn't even pick those up. You know, so I've gone from that revoltingness to teachers completely ignoring NAIDOC for probably the first 15 years of my teaching career. And I couldn't even get them to do that. And then in the last 10 years, they'd maybe put a poster up. But then I had to do all of the talks throughout the school. And then I left the classroom, and that's when the panic happened. And it was about the same time that it was becoming in the curriculum that you had to do things. So for a really long time, there was a section in the curriculum that you could choose to go in and out of, and there were just a little extras. So teachers who hadn't made that connection to Aboriginal histories and cultures would ignore it. So the government hadn't mandated it.
Is it state or federal?
This is both.
Right.
So in all of the curriculum, so we have our federal curriculum and we also have our state curriculum that people choose to take from. And then the federal said it's mandated now for you to have a culturally safe classroom for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children. This was last year.
Right.
Maybe the year before. Terrible with time.
It's a bit late coming, though, isn't it?
A bit late coming.
Yeah.
So then what we have is we have teachers all over Australia panicking. I don't know what this is. I don't know how to do it. I'm too scared to make mistakes, which we'll delve into later. Federal government has made this, but then they haven't put in the money to train the teachers. So teachers are wandering around, they don't know what to do. So we're getting a little bit of the ignoring.
Yeah.
We're getting a little bit of we tried, but we can't go on.
It's all too hard.
It's all a bit hard.
Yeah.
So that the federal government's done this without any kind of backing or support. So a little bit's happening, but it's just not enough. What's happening isn't strong enough to change generations of people who were denied an education. What needs to also happen within teachers is we promote self-education within our children and lifelong learning, but we don't do it ourselves. So if the federal government has said you are now mandated to create a culturally safe place and embedded within the curriculum now, not to the side on the extra curriculum stuff, embedded you have to teach these things that they have no idea about, majority, not all, and they need to start going, okay, I have to self-educate.
But isn't the responsibility really on the federal government? If it's mandating these changes to the education system, don't they need to ante up and say, okay, we're now going to assist you? Otherwise, it's just a statement for the sake of a statement.
That's exactly where we landed. So they have put little things in place so that goes to the state. So then, of course, it filters down as it does. So state government...
It's also called passing the buck, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. But, they're busy. They're busy people. So then it goes into the state. So the state has put in things where they've got training programs that are within all of the curriculums, or I don't know what they're called, those people are doing their thing, I'm doing my thing over here. So there's training programs available, and they're also mandated to do them certain hours every year. Maybe I think it's like 1 or 2 hours. It's not a lot of time, and it's not a lot of value. So once they do that, then we have the problem of teachers who think they're experts. Okay,
God
so
save us from those.
Yes, so that's another issue. Or the ones that travel to the Northern Territory.
Oh, please don't.
And then they're culturally, they're spiritually aware now. They're on country here.
It's a different kettle of fish, isn't it?
It's a different kettle of fish. You are constantly on country, by the way, so you can have that spiritual connection wherever you sit, stand, and live. So there's all sorts of sort of historical problems that we've got to get rid of in this space. But states trying is just such a big problem, because for years we have got teachers that are in my age bracket, even older. Then we've got it's only really the new teachers coming in that have had any kind of education, and it's been at university level. And only if a person has decided themselves to connect to the beauty within our culture that they bring that into the classroom. So we are decades behind the ball, decades behind these teachers understanding what happens, but it is up to them as individuals, because we, as teachers, this is just who we are. We want to continue to self-educate, but why do we do it on everything else, but just not this and go, it's too hard? I don't want to offend.
All right, well, let me just hold off coming down to the teachers self-educating and their own professional development. What I'd also like to touch on is, what can parents do? Because the voices of parents when it comes to schools can't be really underrated at all. There's fairly powerful force there. What do you want to see parents start to do?
Yeah, parents, we work so closely with the parents. The parents are such an important role in a child's education. They're their whole life. They're there. We get them for a really long time too during the day. So the parents, when they do start to come to school, they're sort of just seeing them in the morning, in the afternoon, but the weekends and how they live their life every day is really, really important. School holidays, take them to festivals, take them to community events, connect yourself. When you travel around this beautiful country, find out whose country you are on. When you cross over, announce yourself, say, we're here in this beautiful country, we're going to take care of this country, we'll do our best, thank you to the ancestors for caring. My son, we just drove to Torquay, we passed the signs, he'll say, don't worry Mum, I said it. You don't even have to say it out loud, you can say it in your head, with your heart, I cross over into this country, I'm going to look after it, I'm going to care for it. Make it a thing that is important to your children, connect to all of that beauty. Learn the local languages. It doesn't have to be the full language. We're still learning it because it was denied to us from colonisation and taken away from us. So learn little words that can be a part of it. I put my son's shoes on and I said, come on then, take off your socks from your ginner and get me that little ginner and tickle it, like his little foot.
Or even go to the toilet, go to the
Jillawa, just using language. So simple. Find out what it is, connect to that, connect to the beauty. Have ingredients in your cooking that you're cooking with that are indigenous ingredients. In your garden, have indigenous herbs and plants. When the plant says you can take out the reeds, weave together, anything. There's so much they can do.
What about the teachers having a voice at the schools to bring about change?
Yeah, so it can really be difficult if you have a principal that hasn't connected to the beauty, hasn't connected to the truth-telling.
Sure.
So that can be a really difficult thing for teachers. But we are isolated in our rooms, so we can pretty much do what we want. We've got a curriculum. We are mandated.
As a teacher, you're talking about.
As a teacher, we are in our little rooms. We are mandated to create a culturally safe space. You are safe to do that. And you should be doing it even if you do not have an Aboriginal child in your room. I've worked at schools that are like, but we don't have any Aboriginal children, we don't need to do it. But you do have 1,000 children that you're caring for that will go into the workforce, that will make real changes and impacts when they're there. So celebrate with them, connect with them, tell the hard truths with them. And they will connect, you will connect, and you just going along like you've got an Aboriginal child in that room, okay? They have such an important role, teachers, and they need to bring in their own connection, but they're the same. On the weekends, connect with the local community. Bring local community into your classroom. Have your uncles, have your aunties come in, and if you can't get a traditional owner, or traditional custodian of that land. Have somebody who is a respected community member, because there's plenty of us that live off country. I certainly do.
Yeah.
And I have made connections with the local elders here myself. I have spoken to them about what my role can be. I've respectfully done that. I have permission from the elders. Auntie Di, she looks at my work and she says...
This is Auntie Di Kerr.
Auntie Di Kerr.
Yeah,
She's looked
beautiful.
at all the work that I do. We've sat, we've had conversations. If there's a quick text, I can say, Auntie Di, what about this? And she'll be like, yes, beautiful. Go, keep going. And it's with their permission I can do it. So I'm seen as what's called a respected community member. Have those people come in. But your biggest asset is your Aboriginal family at the school. Don't treat them like a poster person that is going to stand up and do all of your welcomes. No. You do those. You do the acknowledgements. They don't have to be, these children shouldn't have to stand up and be the experts.
Absolutely.
They are still learning like that, like the teacher did as a child, who they were, about their own self, own culture. But the family, invite them in. Have monthly meetings. What do you need? What do you want? What do you see? How can we fix this?
What about networks? What about teachers setting up their own networks to share? Because if they're really responsible for their own professional development, and it seems increasingly they are, the importance of having your peers there to share ideas, to bounce ideas off and to help each other can't be underrated, surely. Have you seen these sorts of networks emerge?
Oh, yeah. There's plenty of networks. All schools have them. So you'll have your principals who will have networks. I speak at a lot of those and travel around Australia doing that, speaking at principal networks. I also do that at teacher level networks. And then you'll have, like, even within the arts. So the art teachers will have their own networks and they'll meet. So that's very much been a system that's been set up for a really long time. So all you need is one passionate person to say, hey, let's go. Let's do this properly. Invite people into those networks and learn from them. We want to be a part of that. We want to do it. And it can be difficult. And one of the difficult things is your local land councils. They're overworked. There's not enough people. So you've got to make that connection yourself. Like, people will say, I find it really difficult to get, people from the local land council, from the local Aboriginal corporation to come out. That's an Australian-wide thing, because there's just not enough people in those roles. So they're working their absolute hearts out to make it happen. So that's why we've got to bleed down, and we've got to take that on ourselves as individuals to do what we can. Make mistakes. The biggest thing I hear from teachers, I don't want to offend, I don't want to mistakes. I genuinely offend people every day. I genuinely make mistakes.
We were talking of one just a few minutes ago before this.
100%. I make mistakes all the time. I'm happy to be growled at.
Yeah.
And you know what? If an auntie and an uncle are growling at you, they love you, they care, and they want that change. If they are walking away in their silence, then you're in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're in big trouble.
What are some of the other challenges that are facing the education system? But let's just keep it at the teacher level.
Yeah, at the teacher level, it's definitely around that not understanding and them being denied an education, not being able to find people to help them. But then I also get that people don't know where to find resources. Some of our resources aren't on page one. Okay?
Yeah.
We as Aboriginal people have only really been invited into the economy for 40 years. Let's face it, my dad couldn't get a bank loan. Okay?
Yeah.
I'm 52. He could get a bank. Am I 52? I think I'm 53 now. Goodness me, that happened quickly.
Don't age yourself that quickly, for goodness sake.
So I was 10 when my dad could get a bank loan.
Yeah.
Okay? So that meant businesses couldn't get a bank loan. Okay? So it was a long time, and we're only really getting that right now in this decade.
And this all contributed, of course, to the gaps that currently
all
exist.
All of the gaps that currently exist. Okay, so what happens with that is we also don't have money to put the tiny little words at the back of websites, because we also are very new to that. We've been an Instagram and a Facebook community for a really long time.
So talk about the resource that you've been developing, and to our audience, we will have up on our website, easily downloaded to accompany this particular interview.
And those have the little words that I'm talking about, and they will be the ones you'll find. The other resources will be page 2, 3 or 4. So
sure.
Look there.
Yep.
So the resources that I've been writing with SBS Learn for, I think I'm in my 7th year. So NAIDOC resources are available, and they have always matched the themes of NAIDOC, and they are aligned with the curriculum, and if I do say so myself, they are brilliant. Okay,
You're not the only person saying it, so you're forgiven to say that.
What's brilliant about them is if teachers only printed out those resources for the last 7 years,
Yeah.
and a lot of teachers do this, I probably get stopped 3 times a week in the street from teachers who say thank you. Thank you for these resources. They have helped me take the steps forward. It is all of the books you need. We never repeat an activity. We never repeat a book, a video, anything. So all new things that people can access, and all of the themes still relate to today.
So what are some of the typical resources that our listeners are going to find?
So within this resource, it's different to other ones. It's not aligned with a book, or it's not aligned to a film. So what I'll do is I'll start with the books that they should have. All goes up from early years right up to year 10. And they'll have the books, and I'll write activities, so match to that theme of there. Then there'll be a bunch of activities that they can do. I try to get in art, I try to get in all of the different areas, a lot of writing, there'll be journal, poetry, lots of different things that they can do. And then we'll have extra resources that they can access and help them connect, learn, self-educate. I diarise myself when I want to spend time learning even more about my own people, because if I don't diarise that time, my life just keeps going. Mm-hmm. So it will be part of my week where I'll listen to a podcast by a lived experience of an Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander person. So they need to start doing that. But that's all there. There's nothing for them to worry about. Print them all off, bind them together, put them on there. When you're trying to look for something, it's all there. Get those books, put them in your classroom library, put them in your school library so kids can borrow them, they can read them. Language is starting to come through.
There's some so great resources out there for languages, aren't there? I mean, Auntie Gail Smith has just come out with 12 books.
Oh, has she?
Yeah, amazing. These are nursery rhyme books.
Oh,
and she's come out with them in language. There's a series of 12, and I believe that she's done that in partnership with Moonee Valley City Council, which is a really great initiative on the part of that council. Of course, the Bangarang have recently, as our listeners will be aware, just come out with their very first dictionary. There's so much work
so many
is
more
being
dictionaries.
Done. It's amazing work. Yeah. So as I mentioned to our listeners, we will have links, if not the resources themselves, online at vicaboriginalnews.com.au accompanying this interview with Shelley Ware. Shelley, there's obviously so much more that we do need to talk about with this. I'd love to explore some of the resources in detail. Can I invite you back?
I'd love to come back.
We're aware you're heading off to Tiwi for a couple of weeks.
I am, and that's with the Indigenous Literacy Foundation, who have amazing language resources.
And you're an ambassador for the ILF, aren't you?
I am.
We need to talk about that as well. So until next time, Shelley, thanks so much indeed for your time.
Pleasure.
For a full transcript of this interview, visit the Victorian Aboriginal News website at vicaboriginalnews.com.au. Until our next episode, stay safe and stay informed.